The Central Bank of Kenya has just introduced a 6,000 shillings bond. Let us try to understand it, but we will not understand it in isolation. Let us try to understand it together with the treasury bills, treasury bond, and the previously in the 80s, early 80s, we had the post-bank bonds. The three, treasury bill and treasury bond, are in action. But the post-bank bond is no longer there. It used to be there in the 80s. So this four is a way of the government withdrawing money from circulation. Or if you want to call it, you can say that it is a way of the government borrowing money. Now, why should the government borrow from you? Or better still, what will you gain from the government borrowing from you vis-a-vis other borrowing, especially borrowing from the bank? Let me tell you this. When the government borrows from you, there are two things compared to other borrowing. One, you have heard of banks that went under, especially during Moi's time. So if you have money in your bank and the bank goes under, there is something that is called asset recovery. And you see, you have those people, maybe they have taken your 1 million and the bank goes down today, goes under today. So for you to, all the profits you are getting from that bank ends from the day it is declared bankrupt. And then you go to asset recovery. They say that first of all they'll give you 100,000, then in the process whatever. So what I'm trying to say is that borrowing from the government, chances of the government going bankrupt are almost nil as compared to banks. Another thing is that the interest rate at the bank is higher. For example, from the government is higher, not the bank. Interest rates from the government is higher. Because supposing the government gives you 1.5%. Also, when the banks borrow from the government, they get that 1.5%. So if you are to borrow from the banks, which is a third party, it means that you'll have to pay more than 1.5%, because the 1.5% will still be taken to the central bank. So I would advise you, if you have money, you go to central bank. Now, central bank has been borrowing from rich people. If you look at the treasury bill and treasury bond, yes, the amount the interest is high. But ask yourself how much you need to invest in a bank, in a treasury bill and treasury bond. If you want to invest in the treasury bill and treasury bond, is that treasury bond, you invest in hundreds of thousands, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. And treasury bills, you invest in millions, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. So they're the same thing. The only difference is that this one, the government borrows in hundreds of thousands. And this one, the government borrows in millions. So you find that the interest is almost the same, except that where the treasury bill is concerned, it is slightly higher. I don't know the current figures, but let me just give an example. For example, treasury bond, they can be giving you 1.1% interest. And the treasury bills 1.2%, slightly more. But you see, these are millions and these are hundreds. But then you'll find how many Kenyans can even get 100,000 to give it to a bank, any bank, let's say central bank. Very few. That one now brings the need for central bank to bring this small figure amount. In early 1980s, the postal bank brought in the 20 shillings bond. I'll tell you, there is a lot of similarities between the 1980 bond and today's bond. It is that the government has borrowed from you. But there was a problem with the 1980s bond. First of all, it was in 10 shillings. So you could give the government 10 shillings, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever, even a million shillings. If you took, there were two types of receipts. Suppose you want to get 30 shillings or even 50 shillings bond. There was one which was 20 shillings, and then there was another one for 10 shillings. So if you are going for, let's say, 90 shillings, they'd give you 4 of them, which was for 20 shillings, and 1 of them was for 10 shillings. And if you looked at the two bonds, I happen to have them, is that they looked alike unless you had to look at properly. It is a place where they had written 20 shillings. So in the one for 20 shillings had 2 serial numbers. And the one for 10 had 1 serial number. So all the people whom the bank had taken, all the money that the bank had taken, for 6 months, it used to bring some profit. For example, 20 shillings, a lot of people would make it 1,000,000 shillings. So they would collect this million and do a lottery. They would do a lottery such that if you have a 20 shillings receipt, it shows that you have 2 chances of getting it. So they would do a lottery, and one of you, say you have given out 10 shillings, yes? And they do a lottery where they find that in that million, what is 1% of 1 million? That is 10,000. So you'd find that you'd given out 10 shillings and you win 10,000. But all other people within that 1 million, none has won it. So it was something that they scoop and only one lucky person wins. The difference with the CBK 6,000 bond is that for every 6,000 you save, you get the percentage, the same percentage as somebody who has placed there 1,000,000. But it will be slightly different. As I've said, that treasury bills and treasury bonds have the same interest, only that it is slightly, this one is 1.2% and the other one is 1.1%. So you'll find maybe the 6,000, it will be 1%. So you find that 1%, that is what they are doing. So it is a way of encouraging, and I would really encourage people, instead of placing their fixed deposit account in a bank, I would rather advise you to go to the central bank and have a bond of that amount. It is a good way of saving, because and again, I don't know how long the CBK 6,000 matures, but treasury bill and treasury bond you fill in for 30 days, for 90 days or 180 days. Finishing off, let me go back to CBK bond. After giving out the 10 shillings or 20 shillings or whatever you had, you could not change your mind within 6 months. Yeah, there was no way you could write. There was that security risk, because if somebody stole that money from you, or even you lost, or even you washed that, You see, like today, the treasury bill and treasury bond, your name, and even CBK bond, your name is in the system. It shows that the government has so much money of yours. But these 20 shillings, if you are to lose it, on top of only one person out of 1,000 people gets the profit for all of you to combine. If you lost the receipt, or somebody stole it, or you washed it in your clothes, that's the end of it. Two, after a month or two, if you had a good shopkeeper who would accept to receive that, because then maybe you have 70 shillings, and 70 shillings those days was a lot of money. If you had 70 shillings, and you wanted to convert it into shillings, maybe you could go to a shopkeeper, and there are those people who, let's say you have saved 100, that is 10 shillings times 10. Then you can't wait for the 6 months. Then in the 4th or 5th month, you need the money. You could exchange with somebody, but the person you're exchanging with, you have given him the authority to be lucky on the 6th month, because he or she will only wait for the remainder of the period. The remainder of the period after 6 months. Then after 6 months, whether you are the lucky winner or not, you have to go back to the post office and you receive your money back. So people like me, who are in the forest, now Yapong, we could stay there for over 6 months. We would tell people that instead of you bringing me my salary, why don't you go to the post bank and maybe bring me 300 or 200 shillings worth of bonds. Actually, me, I had equated it to my hardship allowance. So it is placed that way. After 6 months, when you come out of that place, you get 30% times 6. That is 180%, almost 2 months salary. And you see, you are already qualified for the draw. The most important thing is I encourage people to raise the 6,000 CBK bond in the long run. It is just like the post office, but the post office chances were 1 in 1,000. But this one, even if you are just placed there 6,000 alone, you get some interest on it, which is higher than the banks. And this is also the government also has lesser stress of borrowing money from international lending company. Thank you.